The coffee was still warm when the entire network went dark. 18 floors of Vegas systems, 600 employees, and $3 million in active transactions, all frozen in digital amber at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday that nobody saw coming. Emergency lights bathed the server room in hellish red, casting shadows that danced like demons across rows of silent machines. But in the basement, a single father with calloused hands and tired eyes was about to change everything. Tyson Beck had been mopping these hallways for 3 years, invisible as furniture to the suits who rushed past him during daylight hours. His uniform bore coffee stains and the weight of 12-hour shifts. But his mind held secrets that MIT had tried to unlock before life intervened with a crying baby and unpaid medical bills. The building shuddered as backup generators kicked in. Somewhere above, executives were probably screaming into phones, promising clients that this was just a temporary glitch. They had no idea that salvation would come from the man they never bothered to learn by name. Tyson's phone buzzed. A text from his babysitter. Maisie's asking for her bedtime story. She says you promised dragons tonight. He smiled despite the chaos brewing overhead. Maisie, 7 years old, gap-toothed, and convinced her dad could fix anything with enough determination and duct tape. She was wrong about the duct tape, but maybe not about the determination. The service elevator groaned as it carried him up to the 17th floor, where the real carnage was unfolding. Through glass walls, he could see them, the night shift. IT team huddled around glowing screens like survivors around a dying fire. Their faces told a story of panic barely held in check. What they didn't know was that Tyson had been watching. For months, during his quiet rounds, he'd noticed patterns in their code reviews, vulnerabilities in their security protocols that no one seemed to catch. He'd kept his observations to himself, who would listen to a janitor's theories about network architecture. But tonight, as the clock ticked toward midnight and the company's reputation hung by a thread, silence felt like betrayal. Before we dive deeper into this digital nightmare, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? And when this story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Something tells me you're going to want to remember every moment of what happens next, because sometimes the person holding the mop is the one who sees what everyone else missed. The server room smelled like ozone and desperation. Tyson pushed his cart through the maze of humming machines, their LED lights blinking in frantic Morse code distress signals. The cyber attack had been surgical, not the work of random hackers, but someone who understood Vegas systems architecture intimately. Someone who'd found the one weakness that corporate security had overlooked for 2 years. Tyson knew because he'd been tracking it in a notebook hidden beneath cleaning supplies in his cart. Call it professional curiosity from his unfinished MIT days, or maybe just the habit of a man who noticed things others ignored. Status report. The voice cracked like a whip through the emergency-lit chaos. Mira Travers, Chief Technology Officer, strode into the server room with the focused intensity of a general surveying a battlefield. At 38, she'd clawed her way to the top of a male-dominated industry through pure competence and a reputation for making impossible deadlines possible. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes held the kind of exhaustion that came from 3 straight days of crisis management. Behind her trailed Ronan Vega, the company's founder and CEO, a man whose fortune was built on promising clients that their data was safer than Fort Knox. Tonight, that promise was crumbling. In real time, we're hemorrhaging connections, reported Knox Greer, the lead systems administrator, his voice thin with panic. Whatever they use to get in, it's adaptive. Every patch we deploy, it evolves around. Tyson paused his mopping, listening from the shadows between server racks. He'd seen this before, not the attack itself, but the signature of the vulnerability it exploited. A buffer overflow in the legacy authentication system that created a cascading failure point. Elegant, devastating, and completely preventable if anyone had bothered to audit code written 6 years ago by a programmer who'd left the company in a bitter lawsuit. How long until we can restore basic functionality? Mira demanded. Unknown. Knox admitted. This isn't just a DDoS attack. They're inside our architecture, rewriting permissions in real time. It's like they have admin access to systems that shouldn't even exist anymore. That's because they do, Tyson thought, gripping his mop handle tighter. He'd mapped the ghost directories months ago during routine maintenance, abandoned code repositories that still had active pathways into current systems. Digital archaeology that nobody bothered to clean up. His phone buzzed again. Another text. From home. Daddy, Maisie drew you a picture. She says it's you fighting computer dragons. Very detailed flames. The image made him smile despite the gravity of the situation. Maisie had a way of turning his bedtime stories about troubleshooting into epic adventures. Dragons became viruses, knights became programmers, and happy endings were always possible if you were brave enough to try. We need to call in external security consultants, Ronan was saying, his voice tight with controlled panic. This is beyond our capabilities. That'll take hours to coordinate, Mira replied. And every minute we're down costs us $50,000. Tyson said quietly. The room went silent. 6 pairs of eyes turned toward him like he'd materialized from thin air. I'm sorry. Myra's voice carried a dangerous edge. Tyson straightened, setting his mop against the nearest server rack. $50,000 per minute in lost transactions, plus reputation damage that'll cost millions in client retention. Your attack vector is a legacy buffer overflow in the authentication daemon, probably triggered through one of the ghost directories in your archived repositories. The silence stretched like a held breath. Knox's face flushed red. How could you possibly? Because I've been watching, Tyson said simply, and I think I know how to stop it. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps as the IT team processed what they'd just heard. Knox laughed. A sharp, disbelieving bark. You think you know how to stop a sophisticated cyber attack? You're a janitor. Knox. Myra's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. Her eyes remained fixed on Tyson, calculating. What exactly have you been watching? Tyson pulled his notebook from beneath the cleaning supplies, its pages worn soft from months of observations. Your security audits missed the legacy pathways because they're not listed in current documentation. But they're still live, still processing authentication requests from deprecated services. He opened to a page covered in network diagrams. Connection flows mapped in careful handwriting during countless midnight rounds. 3 months ago, I noticed unusual traffic patterns through subnet 192.168.47.x. Traffic that shouldn't exist because those servers were supposedly decommissioned. In 2019, Mira stepped closer, studying the notebook over his shoulder. Her perfume carried hints of coffee and determination. These are internal IP ranges. How did you? I clean the offices where printouts get left behind, Tyson said. I empty trash cans full of discarded code reviews. And I have a good memory. For patterns. Ronan Vega emerged from behind a server rack, his face a mask of controlled fury. Are you telling me our security breach could have been prevented by reading our garbage? I'm telling you that your legacy systems create a vulnerability map that someone with patience could exploit. Tyson flipped to another page, showing a detailed timeline. The attack started 3 days ago with reconnaissance probes. Small pings to test response times on those ghost directories. Yesterday, they began uploading payloads. Knox shook his head vigorously. This is insane. We can't trust critical infrastructure decisions to someone who's been right so far. Mira interrupted. She turned to face her team. Everything he's described matches our attack pattern analysis. Knox, pull up the traffic logs from subnet. 192.168.47. Fingers flew over keyboards. Data cascaded across monitors in green streams of numbers and text. Knox's face gradually paled as the evidence mounted. Jesus, he whispered. There's a live connection tunnel running through decommissioned servers. It's like having a secret door in a demolished building. Tyson nodded. And whoever's attacking you found that door. They're using it to maintain persistent access even when you close their other entry points. Can you close it? Mira asked. Not remotely. The authentication daemon needs to be manually terminated from the physical server. But that server is in the sub-basement, Knox finished. Behind 3 security doors and a flood mitigation system that's been acting up all week. The room fell silent except for the persistent hum of failing systems. Every second of delay meant more damage, more lost data, more questions from clients who trusted Vegas systems with their digital lives. Tyson's phone buzzed. This time it was a photo from his babysitter, Maisie fast asleep, clutching a stuffed dragon, and wearing a hand-drawn badge that read Dragon Fighter's Daughter. He looked at the faces around him, exhausted, desperate people who'd built their careers on solving impossible problems. Tonight, they were losing a battle against an enemy who'd turned their own architecture against them. "I'll go," Tyson said. Quietly. "Absolutely not," Ronan snapped. "We're not sending maintenance staff into a potential electrical hazard zone. With respect, Mr. Vega, I know those sub-basement tunnels better than anyone. I've been maintaining them for 3 years. And right now, I'm your best option for reaching that server before your attackers realize we've found their back door." Mira studied his face, searching for doubt or hesitation. She found neither. "What do you need?" she asked as Tyson outlined his plan. None of them noticed the small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Not cleaning up other people's messes, but preventing them entirely. The sub-basement of Vegas systems existed in perpetual twilight, lit by emergency strips that cast everything in sickly yellow hues. Tyson descended the maintenance ladder with practiced ease, a headlamp cutting through shadows that had swallowed lesser men whole. The air tasted of copper pipes and forgotten ambitions, thick with humidity from the flood mitigation system that gurgled and hissed like a sleeping beast. Through his earpiece, Myra's voice crackled with static. "Target server should be 30 meters east, behind the water processing unit. How's visibility down there?" "Like navigating a haunted house," Tyson replied, stepping over puddles that reflected his light in fractured patterns. "But I've been here before." What he didn't tell them was why 6 months ago, during one of Maisie's worst fever nights, he'd brought her to the office rather than leave her with a babysitter who couldn't handle medical emergencies. She'd curled up in his supply closet, delirious with illness, while he worked his shift. When she woke around 3 a.m., she'd wandered into these tunnels following the sound of monster breathing, the flood pumps cycling through their automated routine. He'd found her sitting cross-legged in front of the exact server he was seeking. Now, having a perfectly rational conversation with what she called the sleepy dragon. In her fevered imagination, the blinking server lights were dragon eyes, and the steady hum of processors was contented purring. "Daddy," she'd whispered that night, "the dragon is sad. Someone put chains on it that it doesn't need anymore." Even through her illness, she'd somehow sensed what Tyson's trained eye would later confirm. This server was running unnecessary processes, bound to systems it should have forgotten years ago. Now, as he approached that same server, he could almost hear Maisie's voice echoing in the darkness. "You have to be gentle with dragons, Daddy. They only get angry when they're scared." "I'm at the target location," he reported, his headlamp illuminating the server rack that had become central to tonight's digital battlefield. Legacy hardware hummed behind locked steel doors, faithfully executing code written by programmers who'd long since moved on to other companies, other problems. "What's your status on the authentication daemon?" Mira asked. Tyson pulled up the server console, his fingers moving with muscle memory developed during late-night troubleshooting sessions. Lines of code scrolled past, each one a thread in the tapestry of Vegas Systems' digital infrastructure. "Found it," he said. "But there's a problem." "Define problem." Knox's voice cut through the static. Tight with anxiety, Tyson stared at the screen, processing what he was seeing. The authentication daemon wasn't just running. It was actively communicating with the attackers, feeding them real-time updates on every security measure the IT team deployed upstairs. "They're not just using your ghost directories," he said. Slowly, "they've turned your legacy system into a command and control center. Every patch you deploy, every firewall rule you implement, they're seeing it all through this connection." Silence on the radio. Then Myra's voice, deadly quiet. "Are you saying we've been fighting with our playbook wide open? Worse, they've been 3 moves ahead since the beginning. But that also means," the lights went out, emergency power kicked. In a heartbeat later, but in that moment of absolute darkness, Tyson understood the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just a cyber attack. It was a surgical dismantling of everything Vegas Systems had built, executed by someone who knew their infrastructure better than they did. His headlamp flickered back to life, illuminating the server console, where a new message had appeared in bright green text. "Hello, Tyson. We've been waiting for you." Above him, through the static-filled radio, he could hear chaos erupting in the server room. Shouts, running footsteps, the sharp crack of Myra's voice cutting through panic. Tyson, abort. They know you're there. Get out now. But as he stared at that message, cursor blinking patiently after his name, Tyson realized something the attackers hadn't counted on. They knew his name, knew his location, knew his technical background from MIT records they'd probably accessed months ago. What they didn't know was that he'd learned more about persistence from his daughter than any computer science textbook could teach. And right now, a 7-year-old's wisdom about taming dragons was about to become their biggest mistake. The message on the screen updated with surgical precision. We know about Maisie. We know about the medical bills. We know about MIT. Walk away now, Tyson. And this ends quietly. Tyson's blood turned to ice. His fingers trembled over the keyboard as implications crashed through his mind like falling dominoes. These weren't random cybercriminals. They were hunters who'd been stalking their prey for months, mapping not just network vulnerabilities, but human ones. Through his earpiece, chaos continued to unfold 17 floors above. Tyson, respond. Myra's voice carried an edge of desperation. Are you receiving? He clicked his radio twice, the signal for message received but cannot respond safely, and stared at the screen where new text was appearing. Your daughter attends Riverside Elementary. Room 14B. Mrs. Chen's class. She walks 3 blocks to the bus stop every morning at 7:45 a.m. Alone. The words hit him like physical blows. Someone had been watching his little girl, cataloging her routines, turning her innocence into a weapon against him. His phone buzzed. A photo message from an unknown number. Maisie at the bus stop that morning, gap-toothed smile brilliant in the sunshine, completely unaware that predators were documenting her every move. Tyson closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 3 years of careful routine crumbling around him. Night shifts that let him walk her to school. A quiet job that kept him invisible. A life built on protecting the only thing that mattered. Your move, Janitor, appeared on the screen. Walk away, or we make some calls to people who know where little girls sleep. Above him, the building's air circulation system groaned like a wounded animal. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness beyond his headlamp's reach. The server hummed its patient song, processing transactions for people who had no idea their digital lives hung in the balance. Tyson thought about Maisie's drawing of him fighting computer dragons, about bedtime stories where knights never backed down, no matter how scary the monsters became, about a 7-year-old who believed her daddy could fix anything, that he thought about the promise he'd made at his wife's funeral, that Maisie would never feel unsafe, never doubt that someone was fighting for her, never learn that the world could be cruel to people who couldn't fight back. His fingers moved to the keyboard. I need to make a call, he typed. No calls. Walk away now. To my daughter. To explain why daddy's going to be late. A pause. Then, you have 60 seconds. Tyson pulled out his phone and dialed home. His babysitter answered on the first ring. Hey, Elena, is Maisie still awake? Just barely. She's been asking when you're coming home. Want to talk to her? Please. Shuffling sounds, then Maisie's sleepy voice. Daddy? Are you still fighting the computer dragons? Yeah, baby. The biggest one. Yet. Remember what we talked about when knights face really scary monsters? They get scared too, but they fight anyway because people need them to. That's right. And what makes them brave enough to fight? Knowing someone loves them more than anything in the whole world. Tyson's voice caught. I love you more than anything in the whole world, Maisie. I know, Daddy. Go save the day. I'll keep your good luck dragon safe until you get home. The line went dead. Tyson looked at the screen, where his unknown tormentors were waiting that he began to type, but not the surrender they expected. Instead, he opened a command terminal and started executing a sequence of commands he'd been mentally rehearsing for months, not to fix the current attack, but to expose something far more dangerous. Because Tyson Beck hadn't spent 3 years invisible in these halls just cleaning floors, he'd been hunting. The truth unraveled in lines of code that painted a picture darker than anyone had imagined. Tyson's fingers flew across the keyboard, executing commands that pulled back layers of digital deception like peeling an onion. Each query revealed new connections, and with them, a conspiracy that reached far beyond tonight's attack. What are you doing? Appeared on the screen. We told you to walk away. Mapping your network, Tyson typed back. All of it. For months. During his quiet rounds through Vegas systems, he'd been documenting more than just security vulnerabilities. Late-night conversations overheard through thin office walls, discarded emails in executive trash cans, patterns of access that didn't match official org charts. Knox Greer, the lead systems administrator who dismissed him so readily upstairs, had been logging into the system at 3 a.m. every Tuesday for 6 months. Always from home, always accessing files that weren't part of his official responsibilities. Ronan Vega's personal accounts showed wire transfers to overseas consulting firms that existed only on paper. Money moving in circles that led nowhere and everywhere at once. And there, buried in the authentication logs that only someone with Tyson's patience would have noticed, a pattern of administrative access from an IP address registered to Knox's home network, timestamped during hours when Knox was supposedly sleeping. The attack wasn't coming from outside, IT was coming from inside. His earpiece crackled back to life. Tyson, Myra's voice cut through static. Whatever you're doing down there, it's working. The attack vector just shifted. They're pulling back from primary systems. Myra, Tyson said carefully. I need you to listen very carefully. Don't react. Don't look around. Just listen. Knox isn't trying to stop this attack. He's coordinating it. Silence. Then, barely audible. Evidence. I'm uploading everything to your personal device now. Administrative access logs, financial records, communication patterns. It's all there. Through the radio, he could hear the subtle shift in atmosphere as Myra processed the information. Her voice, when it came back, was steel wrapped in silk. Knox, I need you to run a diagnostic on the Eastern Server Bank. Take Holden with you. But the primary systems, now Knox. Footsteps receded. Then Myra again, voice low. How long have you known? Suspected for weeks. Confirmed tonight when he knew details about the legacy systems that weren't in any documentation he had access to. Tyson continued typing, following digital breadcrumbs deeper into the conspiracy. But there's more. This isn't just about corporate espionage. Your father's company isn't the target. It's the weapon. What do you mean? Vegas Systems processes financial transactions for 17 major clients. Banks, insurance companies, pension funds. Someone's been using your infrastructure to skim fractions of pennies from millions of transactions. Micro-theft on a massive scale. The screen in front of him filled with transaction logs spanning months, each one showing tiny discrepancies that added up to millions of dollars. Death by 1,000 cuts, invisible to auditors but devastating in aggregate. How much? Myra asked. Conservative estimate? $47 million over 18 months. His phone buzzed with another message from the unknown number. Stop digging or we start making calls. Tyson smiled grimly and kept typing. You made one mistake, he said aloud, knowing they could see his words on their screen. You assumed I was motivated by self-preservation. Your daughter is exactly why I'm not stopping. He opened a new terminal window and began executing the sequence he'd hoped never to use, a complete system backup and evidence preservation. Protocol he'd coded during lonely nights when Maisie was sleeping and the weight of what he'd discovered kept him awake. Every transaction log, every access record, every piece of digital evidence was being copied to servers beyond the reach of Knox's administrative privileges, servers that belonged to friends from his MIT days who specialized in digital forensics. The FBI will have everything in 6 minutes, he typed. Every stolen dollar, every falsified record, every threat you've made. You want to hurt my daughter? Get in line behind the federal prosecutors. The response came immediately. You have no idea what you've done. I know exactly what I've done, Tyson replied. I've saved my daughter's future from people who think other people's children are acceptable collateral damage. Above him, through 17 floors of steel and concrete, he could hear sirens approaching. Not fire trucks or ambulances, the steady, purposeful wail of law enforcement descending on Vegas systems like digital cavalry. Myra's voice crackled through his earpiece. Tyson, you magnificent bastard. How did you auto-trigger, he said simply. When I confirmed Knox's involvement, the system automatically contacted the FBI's cyber crimes unit. They've been tracking this financial skimming operation for months, just waiting for someone to connect the dots. And you connected them. I had help, Tyson said, thinking of Maisie's innocent questions about why some people's computers seemed sad about her uncanny ability to spot things that didn't belong. Sometimes wisdom comes from the most unexpected places, like a 7-year-old who sees dragons where adults see only code. The elevator ride to the 17th floor felt like ascending from one world into another. Tyson emerged from the sub-basement to find the server room transformed into a crime scene. FBI agents and Navy windbreakers moved with practiced efficiency, cataloging evidence, while Vegas Systems employees watched their digital kingdom being dissected by federal investigators. Knox Greer sat in handcuffs on a chair near the window, his face a mask of defeated resignation. Beside him, Holden Baxter, Knox's supposed assistant who'd turned out to be his partner in the elaborate theft scheme, stared at the floor like he was trying to memorize the pattern in the tiles. $47.3 million, Agent Wade Kingsley announced to the assembled crowd, his voice carrying the weight of justice finally served. Skimmed from client accounts over 18 months through microtransaction manipulation. We've been tracking similar operations across 6 states, waiting for someone to give us the smoking gun. Ronan Vega stood near his office door, looking like a man who'd aged a decade in a single night. How long were they planning this? Best estimate? 2 years of preparation, 18 months of execution. Agent Kingsley turned to Tyson. Mr. Beck's documentation provided the final pieces we needed. Transaction logs, access patterns, communication records, a complete evidentiary chain that would have taken us months to assemble. Mira approached Tyson, her professional composure, finally cracking to reveal something warmer underneath. You knew all along, didn't you? That's why you volunteered for the sub-basement. I suspected, but I needed them to show their hand completely. Tyson looked at Knox, who was being led away by federal agents. They made it personal when they threatened Maisie. That was their mistake. No, Mira said quietly. Their mistake was underestimating what a father will do to protect his child. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, dawn was beginning to paint the city in shades of gold and amber. The crisis that had begun in darkness was ending in light, and with it, the quiet dignity of a man who'd spent 3 years invisible was finally being seen. Mr. Beck, Ronan Vega approached, his voice heavy with things unsaid. I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. No need, sir. You hired me to maintain your building. That includes the people in it. Ronan smiled, the first genuine expression Tyson had seen from him all night. Speaking of which, I'd like to discuss a different kind of maintenance role. We're going to need a new head of cybersecurity, someone who understands that threats don't always come from where you expect them. Tyson raised an eyebrow. I don't have the qualifications. You have something better, Mira interjected. You have instincts, and you see patterns that others miss. She paused, studying his face. Plus, we need someone we can trust. Someone who's already proven they'll put principle above personal safety. His phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Maisie's awake and asking if you slayed the dragons yet. Also, she made you breakfast. It's creative. Tyson smiled, feeling the weight of the night finally lifting from his shoulders. Can I think about it? I need to get home to my daughter. She's expecting a full report on tonight's dragon slaying activities. Of course, Ronan said. Take your time. Though I should mention, the new position comes with day shifts, full benefits, and enough of a salary increase to cover certain medical expenses that might be weighing on a single father's mind. The offer hung in the air like morning mist, full of possibility and new beginnings. As federal agents finished their work and the sun climbed higher over the city, Tyson Beck walked out of Vegas Systems for what might be the last time as a janitor. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with another message from Maisie. Daddy, I saved you some cereal. The dragon-fighting kind with marshmallows. He laughed out loud, surprising himself with the sound of joy echoing in the morning air. Sometimes the best rewards aren't promotions or paychecks. They're 7-year-old girls who believe their fathers can save the world, one dragon at a time. 3 months later. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the newly renovated Cybersecurity Operations Center on the 18th floor of Vegas Systems. Tyson Beck, Director of Threat Assessment and Digital Infrastructure Security, according to the nameplate. On his desk, sat reviewing the quarterly security report while his daughter built elaborate castles out of paper clips and rubber bands in the corner office space that had been designated Maisie's engineering lab. Daddy, she announced, looking up from her construction project. I think your computer is trying to tell you something. Tyson glanced at his monitor, where a routine security scan had flagged an anomaly in their Eastern European client's transaction patterns. Nothing threatening, just odd. The kind of pattern that might mean nothing or might mean everything. What do you think it's trying to say? He asked, genuinely curious about his daughter's perspective. Same thing as when our toaster started. Making that weird humming sound last week, Maisie replied matter-of-factly. Someone's not paying attention to the important parts. Tyson smiled and made a note to investigate the flagged transactions more thoroughly. In the months since the Knox Greer incident, he'd learned to trust his daughter's instincts about things that seemed not quite right. She had an uncanny ability to spot discord in systems that appeared to be functioning normally. His office door chimed, and Mira entered carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the kind of satisfied expression that usually meant good news. Federal prosecutors just called, she announced, settling into the chair across from his desk. Knox and Holden both accepted plea agreements. Full cooperation, complete asset forfeiture, and testimony against the larger network they were part of. How large? Tyson asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Remember that financial skimming operation you uncovered? It spans 12 states and involves at least 47 companies. The FBI estimates total theft at over $200 million. Mira sipped her coffee, studying Tyson's reaction. Your documentation provided the roadmap they needed to unravel the entire conspiracy. Maisie looked up from her paperclip castle. Does that mean the bad guys are in jail now? The ones who threatened you? Yes, sweetheart. They're going to be in jail for a very long time. Good, Maisie said with the fierce satisfaction of a 7-year-old who'd seen justice served. People shouldn't threaten kids. That's against the rules of being a grown-up. Tyson laughed, marveling at his daughter's ability to distill complex moral issues into simple truths. Speaking of grown-up rules, don't you have school in an hour? Already packed. Maisie jumped up, shouldering a backpack covered in patches featuring dragons, unicorns, and a custom-made emblem that read Future Dragon Fighter. Can you tell the story tonight? The one about the janitor who saved the castle. If you promise to brush your teeth without me having to ask 17 times. Deal. She kissed his cheek and bounded toward the door, then stopped and turned back. Daddy, are you happy now? The question caught him off guard with its directness. Tyson looked around his office, at the natural light streaming through windows, at the work that challenged him without consuming him, at the life he was building for both of them. Yeah, baby. I'm happy. Good. You smile more now. I like it when you smile. After Maisie left for school, Tyson and Mira sat in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up below them. The morning rush hour flowed in predictable patterns, thousands of people moving through their routines without knowing how close they'd come to digital catastrophe just months before. Any regrets? Mira asked eventually. Tyson considered the question seriously. About exposing the conspiracy? No. About leaving janitorial work? Sometimes. There was something peaceful about working when the world was quiet. You can still work nights if you want, Mira pointed out. Cybersecurity threats don't keep bankers' hours. True, but Maisie needs me home for bedtime stories. Apparently, dragons are much less scary when you know your dad's nearby. His computer chimed with an incoming message. The subject line made him smile. Thank you from the Riverside Elementary PTA. Your donation for new computer lab equipment has been approved. The money had come from his reward for uncovering the financial fraud, a percentage of recovered assets that the FBI had authorized as payment for civilian assistance. Enough to secure Maisie's college fund and still have plenty left over for the kind of community investments that made neighborhoods stronger. You know, Mira said, following his gaze to the message, most people would have kept that money for themselves. Most people don't have 7-year-olds who ask pointed questions about why some schools have better computers than others. As the morning progressed and Vegas systems hummed with the quiet efficiency of a company that had learned hard lessons about trust and vigilance, Tyson settled into the work he'd never expected to love. Protecting digital infrastructure turned out to be remarkably similar to maintaining physical buildings. Both required patience, attention to detail, and the wisdom to know that small problems ignored could become catastrophic failures. His phone buzzed with a text from Maisie's teacher. She told the class her dad fights computer dragons for a living. The kids are very impressed. Also, she's designed a surprisingly sophisticated network security diagram for her science project. Tyson laughed and forwarded the message to Mira, who replied with a single word, prodigy. Maybe so. But more importantly, she was a little girl who'd grown up believing that heroes came in all shapes and sizes, including single fathers with mops and master's degrees they'd never finished, who chose to protect what mattered most even when the world couldn't see their worth. As the sun climbed higher and another day of quiet vigilance began, Tyson Beck looked out over the city his daughter would inherit and smiled. After all, someone had to keep the dragons at bay, and he'd learned from the very best teacher that the job was always worth doing, one bedtime story at a time.